Welcome to the Reviews Without Remorse podcast with Joe and Dave. Be warned, the discussions in this podcast will contain detailed spoilers. For spoiler-free reviews of newly released films, please check out our channel Reviews Without Remorse on YouTube and VidMe. Enter at your own risk and enjoy the show. And welcome back to Reviews Without Remorse. I am, as always, your humble correspondent, Joe, along with my partner, Dave. What's going on, partner?
I am not a correspondent. I am just a human being.
On today's episode, Dave saw Transformers the last night. We will discuss.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I saved you money. I saved you time. And it's very possible I saved you some IQ points.
Probably. I saw a little movie this weekend I'm going to mention real fast. New trailer was out this week we would like to discuss. And a lot of random news that Dave is going to shed a little light on because God knows I can't figure it all out. And then we will talk about the next in the Spider-Man series, Spider-Man 2, which I'm definitely looking forward to talking about.
Yes, it's something nice that we can actually talk about in a positive, happy way. Well, not completely positive. I have my gripes, but they're very, very minimal, you know, and I'm sure Joe has his gripes too, but I'm sure he'll explain them to you.
Also very minimal. Nothing too, but we will discuss. So what else is happening, partner?
Well, let's see what's going on in the world today. We lost the Han Solo directors. We gained Ron Howard as a Han Solo director. There's a whole bunch of mishmash BS going on with that nobody can figure out. There's a lot of he said, she said, and it's just crazy. And I'm going to go back to what I said a couple of weeks ago. We don't need a Han Solo prequel movie.
You know what? I don't know. I disagree. I'm kind of looking forward to these offshoot movies. I feel like
I don't have a problem with offshoot movies, but I don't think that you need to really have here's the thing. You want to do an offshoot movie? Let's see the movie of what happened with Obi-Wan between the time he dropped off Luke at the Lars homestead up until the time that he used his Crete dragon yell and he ran into Luke again. That's the story I want to hear about. Because
actually, that's probably the one thing I don't care about. Because frankly, unless you know otherwise, he surfed a lot of porn, watched a lot of TV. I don't know. He just hung out there, as far as I know.
My point is that you've got an actor who's already playing young Obi-Wan Kenobi, who's passionate about it, who can do it very well, can do a great Alec Guinness impression, and wants to do the damn story. Why not?
Yeah, if there's a story to tell, I'd be right on board with it. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I thought that was the missed opportunity in the prequels. I've always felt like, when I was younger, my vision of the prequels was always that Obi-Wan Kenobi was essentially the Luke Skywalker of the prequels. That it would be his story, that he would be the Charles Xavier to Anakin's Magneto, basically. But, we got. If there's more to tell with him, trust me, I'm more than on board with it. I totally agree with everything you just said. I just don't know if there's anything in there that would make sense.
My point is this. There are times that there is a part that's just not interchangeable. There is a role that you just can't give to anybody else, no matter how hard you try. Like, we've used the example of J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson as irreplaceable.
Yeah.
And to the point that even the sequels wisely didn't even attempt to do a J. Jonah Jameson, the Amazing Spider-Man flicks. They didn't even try to bring Jameson into the picture. Now, here you have, the iconic character played by Harrison Ford. How do you replace Harrison Ford? That just seems like you can't.
Right. No, that part I agree with. I do agree that Han Solo, Indiana Jones, Rambo, how do you replace these guys? I mean, in a lot of cases they are. I find the idea fascinating because I agree with you that he is just so integral to that part. I don't know. I don't know. Like I said, I'm open to these offshoot stories, and Rogue One was easier because you're right. They didn't have specific characters they were going to recast.
They could reference characters and in some cases CGI some characters, but you didn't have to have them be the main focus of the story to tell a compelling story.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. It'll be interesting. It'll be very interesting to see what they do. I don't know. But anyway, yeah, apparently the production is a little bit of a mess, but this is late in the game to fire directors. But they did, and they brought in Ron Howard, which, again, solid. Call me old, but, you know.
Get off my lawn.
Yeah, well, anyway, so we'll see what happens. And incidentally, as long as we're kind of getting into the stuff that's going on, that's also kind of similar to what's happening over in Justice League. Now, that's a weird one to me because, now again, we knew this already for a few weeks, but now that I'm seeing what's happening, it's getting interesting to me. Justice League, again, lost their original director, Zack Snyder, and in his place, we now got...
The King of the Nerds.
The King of the Nerds, the same guy who did the Avengers films.
The Avengers and Avengers Age of Ultron. Yep.
Yeah, and first of all, I find that a little fascinating because I'm wondering if Marvel's a little cranky that he did that. I would have to wonder. He's cheating on us a little bit.
No, Feige made it clear that he has no regrets. And honestly, they lost Whedon probably more over the Ike Perlmutter situation than Feige. So I'm not that part of the politics I'm not too concerned with.
Right. But apparently they're doing pretty extensive reshoots. I thought he was just going to go into the editing room and do what he could and, cut it the way he wanted it. But apparently they are doing pretty extensive reshoots, building sets and everything.
Yep.
So he is actually going to put his thumbprint on it. So now, I mean, again, if you asked me a few weeks ago, I said loud and clear, this is shaping up to be terrible. It's going to be another Batman v Superman all over again. It's going to be dark and miserable. And I don't think they're not going to reshoot the whole movie, but it will be interesting to see like what Joss Whedon does with it. So now I don't know what it's going to be. Is he going to rescue it? Is he going to turn it into something different? Like I said,
it's not an easy situation for him. Honestly, wait a minute. Let me take that back. Here's the thing we do have to take into consideration. This is lose-lose for Snyder. He can't win this one. If the movie turns out good, Whedon's going to get the praise. If the movie turns out bad, people will say Whedon couldn't save it.
That's true. You're absolutely right. I agree with you 100%.
I have some sympathy. I'm not the biggest Zack Snyder fan, but I don't wish the guy ill. But this is something I'm 100% sympathetic with him on. He can't win this one. There's nothing he can do at this point. It's got to be agonizing to him knowing that it's not only out of his hands, but that there is nothing he can do to possibly, put his stamp on it and be able to say, this is mine. That's gone. That's over with. He's lost that.
And when we watch it, again, we're not going to know the same way, you always talk about Rogue One and you say, I wish I saw the movie I saw in the trailer, but it got reshot or re-edited or whatever. Similarly, we're going to see this and say, we'll never know now. We'll never know how much was Joss Whedon, how much was Zack Snyder. So it'll be
whatever
interesting.
Scenes from the trailer show up in the movie, we'll know that's Zack Snyder. Everything else is fair game.
Yeah. If there's rain, if it's dark, there you go.
Well, those movies will all take place in the world that we are now creating for Peter Parker. I mean, there'll be adjuncts to it. They may be different locations, but it will still all be in the same world, and they will be connected to each other as well.
So there is a chance that Tom Holland as Spider-Man will pop up somewhere over there? There's always a chance.
There's always a chance. I think one of the things that
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
And on a side note, I can't make heads or tails of this. Amy Pascal from Sony did not a press conference, but they did an interview with Kevin Feige where she said some things about the Venom offshoot that they're planning. They've planned a couple Spider-Man offshoot films. And I guess in the beginning it was unclear whether or not this would actually be in the same Spider-Man universe as the current Spider-Man who is in the MCU. She said point blank, yes, this would be in the same universe, and that it is likely or possible that you would see Spider-Man, played by Tom Holland, appear in these films. Now, Kevin Feige had this look on his face like, what the hell is this woman talking about?
I've come to talk to you again. Seriously, he looked like he was trying to like keep his cool, but just had this "you crazy witch." This
right?
Is not
I mean, it was pretty
what we agreed.
It was pretty baffling, and it took a while for anybody to really kind of come out and confirm or deny the things that were said. I think everybody was trying to be very professional about it, and Kevin Feige included, especially Kevin Feige. So I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on this? Because again, like I said, I've heard some things. I can't make heads or tails of it.
Okay, here is the bottom line. She screwed up. She didn't understand her own damn contracts, and she went above where she thought she was supposed to go, and she got pitch slapped for it. That's it.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah, 100%. Yeah. Amy Pascal lost a lot of power in Sony with the Sony hack and with all the emails, the embarrassing emails that came out because of it. Because she was in most of the emails that you see, she was the one kind of, the ringleader of Sony blames her for the loss of Adam Sandler. By the way, Sony, probably your smartest move you've made in a long time, but we won't talk about that right now.
Yeah.
But for all that we make fun of Adam Sandler's movies, the son of a gun makes a lot of money at the damn box office, and that's a bottom line to a place like Sony.
Right.
Not to mention a bunch of other embarrassing emails that came out. So she lost a lot of power there. And the deal she made with Marvel, if Spider-Man Homecoming becomes huge, like really, like more so than the previous Spider-Man movies, then that's like her return to power. And it's possible that in her desire to like solidify that power, she overextended where she was supposed to go. And it's obvious because Feige was not expecting her to say that because he's made it very clear Venom is not going to be part of this universe. We will do your Spider-Man movies. That's the deal. The deal is we'll do your Spider-Man movies. You do the marketing and the other stuff, and we both benefit.
Right.
And we just get to borrow Spidey every once in a while.
Yeah.
Anything else outside of that that's Sony's thing. That's their own little universe. They want it to be connected because everybody's getting excited about the new Spider-Man, but they can't because that was the deal.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, too, I mean, it would be really interesting if they could pull it off because, again, like not to fast forward to next week's podcast about Spider-Man 3, the trouble with doing Venom in that kind of a film was that how do you explain the symbiote without getting into all of the stuff that goes on? I mean, again, that the whole black costume was a result of the Secret Wars, which I've been pining for a couple weeks, which you never could have done without. I mean, again, you needed the planets had to align to make that happen. We're now living in an era where you could make it happen. I mean, they're going to. I've heard guys do theories about how they can pull this off. They're doing Infinity Wars. You've seen the Collector in the Guardians films. You could make the symbiote just part of his collection or something like that. You can, it could pop up just anywhere, but it has to be an entity that comes from the depths of space. So, but now you can actually do it. So they could just drop a little dime in as a post credits in the first Infinity War. Here's the black thing, and here's how it follows Spider-Man home, or something like that. So but they could do it.
But Marvel wants no part of that. They do not want a part of that because the deal that they made is that they control the Spider-Man movies and they can borrow Spider-Man. But anything outside of Spider-Man is up to Sony. Sony wants complete control, and in the case of Venom, they will have complete control. And As far as Feige's concerned, if we don't have a say in anything about this character, they're not part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. That's it.
Exactly, right. But when you say they want no part of it, you mean that they don't want any part of what Sony is doing. If Sony is going to do this thing, right, if Sony gets it, if they can run and do a Venom of their own, Marvel doesn't want their name attached to it, which I completely understand. I mean, I understand that in spades. You're absolutely right. If Marvel can get Spider-Man and get enough creative control that they're happy with, they could say, look, give us Venom too. We'll see what we can do with it. You just run, like you've announced it. You've said, here's what we want to see. Give us Venom and we'll give you back a pretty good movie.
It's very possible she put it out there as a negotiation tactic, thinking that if she made that announcement, maybe Marvel would just capitulate. And Marvel just said, nope.
Right, and make Kevin Feige look like the party pooper if he can't make it happen.
Right. But instead, but she miscalculated because she was already reviled by the community because of Amazing Spider-Man and Amazing Spider-Man 2 and the emails. Especially, did you ever read the email that Feige wrote to them about the problems with Amazing Spider-Man 2?
No.
Oh my God, you should look it up. They actually released the email where Feige sent an email saying, this is the problems that you have currently with Spider-Man 2. And every single one of them he was dead on about, but they still released it as is. So, as far as the community is concerned, Feige can do no wrong. I mean, unless they get pictures of, like, Feige sodomizing little children, this guy can do no wrong.
When they announced Venom, when they announced it independent of Spider-Man, I'm like, what the heck are they doing? I mean, that just the idea of that sounds like Halle Berry's Catwoman to me. It sounds like...
Yeah, you're getting it, aren't you? You're getting it.
Venom will join the Fantastic Four in the annals of history. Fantastic Four and Catwoman and the other abominations.
Morning, class. Good morning, Miss Justina.
So, this weekend, I saw a little film which really impressed me. It was called The Girl with All the Gifts. Have you seen or heard about this movie?
No, I have not, as a matter of fact.
I skimmed past this. If you saw the little poster and heard the title, you'd say, okay, this is going to be a feel-good movie about a girl who has a little something she overcomes. Oh, no. It is a full-blown zombie movie. And it's really good. It kind of falls in line. When I was sort of praising Get Out, saying that it was a smart horror movie, which you don't get too often, this I thought was a smart zombie movie.
Ah, okay. It's based on a novel, actually.
Is that right? Yeah, I didn't.
Yep.
I'm not. Doesn't surprise me. Again, it's a world that has been overrun by zombies. You don't quite get that at first. In fact, in the beginning of it, it's really kind of different. You're kind of wondering, what am I watching? Why? What is happening here? Why am I seeing what I'm seeing? Then it starts to become clearer, and again, it has a feel like, again, you understand different people's motivations. You sympathize with different people. People are doing smart things, and you know, the zombie fiction has always been kind of weird because, again, something that sort of started off. I don't know if the Night of the Living Dead was the first zombie movie or what was, but again,
it was the first one that popularized it.
Right, and yeah, I mean, you got guys, you know, coming out of the graves and walking around just like boogeyman or whatever. Then you get the newer zombie stuff, which tries to put some science behind it to try to make it like this could happen. And sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. I thought this was pretty smart. Again, they get pretty technical, and it looks like kind of how things would happen if it all went down. And again, great cast. Glenn Close was in it. Gemma Arterton, who was in Quantum of Solace, is one of the leads in it. She was terrific. Yeah, and the girl who plays the girl with all the gifts, I thought she was terrific.
Directed by Colm McCarthy, who he hasn't done a lot. He's done mostly TV and stuff like that. Peaky Blinders and MI5 and The Tudors and stuff like that. So this is probably his first big film. And it was written by the author. The screenplay was written by the author of the books.
Yeah, like I said, check it out. If you're into, and again, I'm not necessarily into the zombie stuff, but this was very good. It was. I tell people all the time. People say, like, do you like horror movies? I go, I like the smart ones. You know, I like the ones that are not terrible, which is only a few, really. And
there's not many.
Yeah. So this to me is like, you know, if somebody says, do you like the zombie stuff? Well, I like this one because it was very good, very smart. You know, didn't rely on not a lot of CGI, if any, really. So
okay.
Yeah, mostly
that's
practical.
Good.
I liked it.
That's really good. All right, I'll check it out.
And now for something completely different.
Optimus Prime, you destroyed your home. Do you seek redemption?
My maker, I do.
And now, for all the people who don't have all the gifts. So, there is a scene in Transformers The Last Knight where Hound, voiced by the wonderful John Goodman, they're in a junkyard, and along comes this, like, Transformers junk robot, this robot that finds, like, junk parts of Transformers to bring to these Transformers. His name is Day Trader, and he's voiced by Steve Buscemi. They have the scene ends, and at no point does John Goodman's character say to Steve Buscemi's character, "Shut up, you're out of your league." And that's my symbolism for Transformers this last night. Nothing but a large amount of missed opportunity. You know what? Here's the only good thing about the last night. This is the only good thing about the last night. It makes mediocre movies better. That's how terrible it is. It is just, it's a mishmash. I mean, on the one hand, from a Transformers fan perspective, and I'm a Transformers fan from the old days, there's a lot of genuflecting to the Transformers history, because they bring up a lot of little things here, there, and everywhere. But in doing so, they completely overcooked the plot. They made me feel dumber as the movie went along. It droned in this loud, obnoxious, like droning sound and explosions that I had like this terrible headache by the end of the movie. The plot made no sense, and just it's awful, 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 awful. All right, it makes, you know what, Joe? If you had watched A Good Day to Die Hard and you watched Transformers the last night right after that, you would appreciate A Good Day to Die Hard a lot more.
Wow, that's bad. The only one I've ever seen was that Age of Extinction, and I remember watching it literally because I was just stuck with nothing to watch. Okay, sat down, figuring, all right, it'll be 2 hours of fluff and eye candy, whatever. I can deal with that. Wow, was that terrible?
Poor stupid man. Yes.
Oh my God, it was god awful. By halfway through
it hasn't gotten better.
Halfway through it, I'm saying, I don't know what the heck is going on here. I mean, this is a Transformers movie. Either I am a colossal idiot, or this movie just makes no sense. I could not figure out who was what and why, and all of a sudden they end up in China for some reason, and I'm like, what the heck is going on? Then he shows up riding on dinosaurs. I'm like, this is just like, if an 8-year-old drew this as a comic, it would make more sense.
They're very beautiful looking flicks. He's got a good camera eye. I'm going to give him that. But other than that, it's a mishmash of mess. It's a Messerschmitt. It's a giant Messerschmitt.
Yeah, and not for nothing. He does have a good camera eye, but you know what? I watched the commercials for it, and it's like, okay, he knows how to make a movie look like a Coke commercial from the 80s.
Because he used to direct Coke commercials from the 80s.
It's got that. That's exactly what it looks like. I mean, they all look the same. Nothing has really changed. I mean, I feel like if you want to say one good thing, they're consistent. I mean, I feel like if you watch the first one and skip to the fifth one, it probably looks like it's done by the same guy in the same universe and all that, because it looks no different.
Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter. I you know what? It's time to put a bullet in this series. It's done. It really, really is. I really, really hope that Mr. Bay is very serious when he says, I'm done. You know, good. It's time to retire yourself from Transformers. Go back to doing Pain and Gain and stuff like that.
Seriously, agreed. Stretch your creative muscles a little bit and try something else.
I believe there's a hero in all of us. Gives us strength, makes us noble. Even though sometimes we have to give up the thing we want the most.
Spider-Man 2.
Well, where should we start?
I just watched it again today, and I hadn't seen it in a while. I've seen it many times, so I mean, I knew it pretty well by heart, or at least I thought I did. And when I saw it today, it was pretty refreshing because I hadn't seen it in a while. Mm-hmm. It starts off great. The part with him delivering the pizzas is really hysterical, and it sets a good tone for the rest of the film, because the part when he is, I mean, again, he's getting yelled at by the guy. You have to get this there, and then all of a sudden, like he's running, he's driving, and he's not going to make it. All of a sudden, you see him get off, and he runs, and he starts to change into Spider-Man, and the big heroic music kicks up, and it like I'm going to deliver these pizzas on time, damn it! Like, that was really funny, I thought.
Honestly, there isn't a lot of bad to say about this movie. It is, for the modern comic book movie, it has become almost the staple, which I think maybe sort of the Dark Knight might have supplanted. But at the time, I mean, it was well reviewed. It was loved. You had a compelling villain with an interesting backstory. There wasn't a hell of a lot to complain about. You had a solid cast. Everybody knew, relatively where they were supposed to be. Alfred Molina was an amazing Doc Ock.
Yes.
You had J.K. Simmons back. I mean, the plot, I've only got, I want to go over just a couple of things real quick. The only real complaints I have about this movie, and this is a couple, and I just want to get them out of the way, and then we can talk about the cool stuff. Okay. The dialogue sometimes was very, very clunky.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. All right. Like, there's this scene where Harry takes Peter to meet Otto, to meet Dr. Octavius.
Yeah.
And Otto's being like, oh, God, whatever, you're paying me, so fine, I'll be that way, and so on and so forth. And it turns out, of course, Pete, being a scientist, eventually charms him. And they cut to, like, them starting, he's talking by the thing, and the next thing you know, they're sitting at a dinner table, his wife is there, and she's serving tea and stuff like that. And it's like, Peter, what have I been talking with you for the last hour and a half? It's like, no, that's terrible. That is absolutely positively terrible. We understand that they're getting along. It started off in their office. Now they're in their private domicile. They're talking face to face. The wife is serving tea. We understand that. You don't have to explain that they've been talking science this amount of time. It came across, and Molina delivered it well. He did, but it was just like,
yeah.
We didn't need that extra level of exposition. And there's a couple other ones that one stood out in my head. The other one was at one point, he's trying to woo MJ back. He's just lost his powers, and he's trying to woo her back and everything like that. And she's like, no, I'm getting married. And as she walks away, she's just about to get into a cab, and this is the actual line. I wrote this down. I'm getting married in a church. What the hell was that?
Well, yeah. What was that? There was something he said that was a response to something. Like something about him.
It didn't deserve I'm getting married in a church line.
It was odd. Yeah, I remember it was a response to something, but yeah, it does make for a clunky response. I agree.
And there was a couple of it throughout the movie, but that's okay.
Well, I'll tell you what, actually, it's funny because you sort of glossed over the part that I remembered was when Harry introduces Peter to Doc Ock. All of a sudden, I felt like Harry now turns into this like bigwig hotshot businessman. And he's like, "Oh, who loves you? Oscorp is gonna set you up, and who loves you, baby?" That kind of stuff. It was really bizarre. See you at the Marconi Awards or something weird like that.
Got you two geniuses together. Good luck tomorrow, Otto. Nobel Prize. We'll see you in Sweden.
Interesting fellow, your friend.
At the Nobel.
see at the Nobel Awards, like just really weird. And then fast forward to after the experiment goes wrong, then Harry's outside, and this to me was like really clunky.
It's ruined me.
I'm ruined. Now there's nothing left for me except Spider-Man. It was like
he says it.
My God,
right.
yeah.
I should have written that down.
So weird. I'm like, really? Like that sounds almost like a note in the margin of the script, not the actual script.
I have nothing left but Spider-Man, and he
seriously.
couldn't even sell it. That's the word. I mean, here's the thing: you take those three lines, those really three clunky lines, and Molina sold it. He still managed to sell it. He made it sound like it was serious, and he was he meant it, and it was like, dude, I don't even care about the time or anything like that. He sold it. Franco couldn't sell his line, and Dunst couldn't sell hers. It just didn't work. It was too clunky.
I agree. It's fun. And again, we talked about these characters last time, and and both of these characters were kind of both of our could have been betters. This one, it gets worse. I remember I said in the last one, the Harry Osborn character to me was such a sort of a throwaway in the first one that it didn't bother me enough to even really mention. Here, it's really getting weird. It's getting kind of like, I mean, again, I don't even remember necessarily Harry and his father being all that close in the first one, much less the idea. I mean, it was kind of weird to me because I always think about this, and if Harry knows that Spider-Man that he was involved in his father's death, then he must know that his father was the Green Goblin, which to me would sort of make you feel like, well, maybe I shouldn't get all that worked up over Spider-Man if my dad was a supervillain.
Actually, he didn't know that because Spidey brought him back to the apartment out of his costume and just laid him on the couch, dead.
Right, true.
Move.
Yeah.
He never the reveal at the end of this movie where Norman taunts him into breaking the glass into his secret chamber where the goblin stuff, but that really was the reveal. But even then, he didn't seem all that shocked. And the fact that, okay, my dad was the Green Goblin, that must have been why Spider-Man killed him. Still, it's like, oh, I don't care. Doesn't matter. He still killed my father.
Right, yeah, right. You're right. You didn't calm down in Spider-Man 3 over it. Yeah,
no, certainly not.
Yeah, I just thought that was it got to be a little much. Like, I mean, again, he says to Doc Ock, go kill Spider-Man. That'll give you all the tritium you want. And then he brings him, and he as he's pulling the mask off, he's got the knife in his hand, like he's going to stab him. And so now little Harry is a murderer. He's going to stab Spider-Man in the heart. Like, I don't know. I just kind of felt like
it was a huge leap in character that didn't
in all
fit.
kinds of ways. Yeah,
yeah.
Like
If they had shown that maybe he was experimenting with the goblin drug as a means of like keeping up with all the pressure and stuff like that, like how it happened in the comic book, it might have made more sense.
Yeah,
but that didn't happen here, and it was too much of a leap that suddenly I'm a murderer.
And not to mention too, again, it's funny. In the first one, I said the big criticism I had, which was understandable, was that they were trying to work too much into one film, and because of that, it feels very connect the dots. The first movie to me was all done in primary colors. It was very black and white, very in your face, and step 1, step 2, step 3. Here they got the luxury of taking their time and not doing as much, but they're still sort of trying too much. Again, now you've taken Harry to this like murderous psychopath, and again by the end, in a scene that today probably would have been a post-credit sequence where he finds the doc his father's Green Goblin stuff.
100%. Yep.
I don't know. Like you said, it just seems like leaps and bounds to get him to now he's going to be the enemy of Spider-Man and become the other, the Hobgoblin, I guess.
The new Goblin is what he became.
Right. So, yeah.
We'll get to that when we get to part 3, folks.
Right. Seriously, we'll get to that misstep later. But
John Jameson was criminally underused. In the comic books, John Jameson is a much more sympathetic character. And honestly, they did a good job making him a sympathetic character, but he becomes a spider villain at some point, and I just kind of felt like he was just there simply to cause tension, and really didn't do much. I mean, I at least, the one thing I liked was, this is the guy that Mary Jane is marrying, and they didn't make him out to be a jerk, so that, like, it seemed, it's right. Justified, which comes to my next problem with the film, which is the leaving someone at the altar and we're supposed to cheer that trope is very long in the tooth. Even when this movie came out, it was very long in the tooth. It's time to get rid of that particular trope.
Yes, I agree with you. In fact, I think we, like, not to jump too far ahead, but as long as we're talking about Mary Jane, yeah, she doesn't really come off in the best light in this film, and I won't belabor too much, because I have a hunch you're going to talk more about it later, and I don't want to ruin anything.
No, I've already said my piece about my miscase. This was actually one of the problems for the end part, for who asked you and for your consideration. I had a very hard time figuring out exactly what to point out. There's a lot of good in this movie that easily makes for your consideration. And as for who asked you, since I kind of bagged on Kirsten Dunst for the first one and James Franco, it's like I can't focus on them because I already feel they're miscast. And this movie in many ways solidifies everything that I judged about them in the first movie. There's nothing good to say about her character here. She still comes across as flighty, 100% flighty, even more so, because, it's obvious she has feelings for Spider-Man. It's obvious she has feelings for Peter. And yet she's still going through this charade with John. Why is she going through the charade with John? I don't know. Because, at the last minute, she's like, that's it. even though Peter has denied me, screw it. I'm going to leave this wonderful man at the altar, go running through the streets of New York in my dress and everything like that. Honestly, I think the only reason they even did that was just so that Jameson can say, call the caterer, tell him not to open the caviar.
Right, which was good, by the way. No, I totally agree. In fact, I'm watching like the scene where, again, like Peter's having the worst night of his life. She's there with the boyfriend. Harry's slapping him in the face. And by the way, the second time he slapped him, I think Peter should have knocked his block off. But like she's giving him hell about this or that. Like, you're never around, you're never this, you're never that. And it's like, hey, I'm at your boyfriend's party. Why don't you get off your soapbox before you start lecturing me about anything? I mean, talk about your mixed signals there.
Let's see what else. One last thing, one last major complaint, and that's this: why do the villains have to keep dying?
Why do they have to keep dying? Well,
they keep dying. You know.
Yeah, well, I'll give you a reason, I think. I mean, well, first of all, because in comic book world, you don't want them to die because you're doing ongoing stories. But I think here, very well, you're not going to... You've only got a couple movies in you before you're... I mean, even if everybody's on board and things are going swimmingly, you're not going to do an endless amount of films. So you're probably not going to revisit the Green Goblin. You're probably not going to revisit Doc Ock. So you might as well give them a finale that maybe I kind of feel. I feel like
I guess, but you know what it is. I'm sure at the time when I saw it, I was like all aboard for it. But it in a way it kind of dates the movie because now there's no way out. There's no Infinity War for Doc Ock.
Right, but this was the days before Infinity Wars, before you had the possibility of bringing people back in different ways. And not for nothing, but you probably still could. If they did like a Secret Wars and they brought the Red Skull back, from First Avenger, they can write something around it and just figure out a way that make that happen. But, I know what you're saying. But I then again, would it be as satisfying if he just kind of marched them off to jail and, I don't know.
It's hard to say. It was the early days of comic book movies. It's hard to say. I mentioned it simply because after a while it became a thing that I just didn't like when it came to the movies. Like even the Batman movies, Batman Returns did that, stuff like that. I didn't particularly care for that either.
Yeah.
But it's 100% Monday morning quarterbacking, and it's the tiniest of nitpicks. It's really it's not the be all end all because everything else was amazing.
See, what's funny about this, and here's a nitpick that I have, and what I noticed about the Spider-Man series is that they try to make their villains sympathetic. The Goblin, he just went a little too crazy, and at the end, he was victim. He died by his own blades. Doc Ock, he was a nice guy, but the arms were what was evil, which I find a little weird. Like I find that a little strange. The arms are evil. And they make Doc Ock evil because they get into his brain. And at the end, he sacrifices himself as his redemption. So that to me that's why you kill him there. But I also noticed when they do this in Spider-Man 3, which again, I won't go too far into because we'll talk about it next week, but they had to make Sandman sympathetic. They went overboard to show him with a sick daughter, and he robs to help her, and he says I'm not a bad guy, I just have bad luck. So we have to be like nobody in the Spider-Man franchise is willing to make just a mean old rotten villain. And so that's why I think Doc Ock dies at the end, because now that's his redemption. He sacrificed himself to solve the problem he caused.
Ladies and gentlemen, fasten your seatbelts.
But incidentally, but I also did want to kind of mention, I did think in that spirit of not wanting to make your villain sympathetic, I do sometimes say to myself, like, why are the arms? First of all, somebody pointed this out in another review, which I thought was spectacular. I think it was the Everything Wrong With. Like, basically he says, in doing his big experiment, his big thing that he's been leaning towards, he also incidentally creates artificial intelligence in these arms, by the way, that he kind of just sort of glances right over. He makes these artificial intelligence arms, which, by the way, link right into his brain, and he had to invent a chip to stop the thing from messing with his brain, so he knew it's got its own intelligence, and it's almost like, and since this thing gives cancer, I had to also cure cancer in order to use these things. That was... So it's like he's doing all of these incredible experiments just to get up to his main one.
Anybody here take shop class?
The hospital scene is great, by the way. That when he, after the experiment fails and he's in the hospital and the arms just sort of start, you just basically tear through all the doctors, and you get, I mean, and that's interesting.
Classic Sam Raimi directed scene.
Yes, very much so. And I thought that was it briefly turns into a horror movie. All the lighting changes, there's harsh shadows. I mean, I thought that was pretty interesting the way he does that. Because again, he's showing the evil of the arms, what they're capable of. And it shows you and makes you feel like this is a scary villain. So it was pretty fitting, even for a film that is, again, like I said, it shifts into horror all of a sudden, but there's a reason for it. I thought it worked pretty well.
Right.
But again, I do find that the evil arms are kind of strange. Like it's almost like it's a cheat in a way to get your villains without making him unbelievably bad. If that makes any sense.
I feel you on that one. That works. Actually, that was one of it didn't become my for-year consideration scene, but the scene where the limbs fighting back against being removed, to me, it's some of the finest editing and staging in the series.
Yeah,
it was very well done. I mean, there was hardly any dialogue. It was mostly sound effects and screaming and stuff like that, and it didn't need it. You got the point. Even today, when I was rewatching it, and my son is there with me, he's like, it starts happening, and he walked out of the room. It's like, aw.
Crazy scientist turns himself into some kind of a monster. 4 mechanical arms welded right onto his body.
He was unembarrassed at being a comic book movie. It didn't mind going over the top, and it did. It went over the top on a couple of occasions, but that's okay. It fit the genre that it needed to be. Very well acted. It actually did do a decent continuation of the Spider-Man story. I mean, even the subplot of him losing his powers. Now, when I first saw the movie many years ago, I said to myself, well, the plot with the powers losing the powers doesn't make any sense, And then as I was rewatching it today, it's like, oh wait, no, it absolutely positively makes sense. He's stretched himself so thin, he's literally blocking his own damn powers because it's like, dude, take a damn break.
See, it's funny you say that, because I've been back and forth on that. I don't know how I feel about that. 'Cause I felt like it was an interesting tool to sort of put him back in that kind of my favorite of the superhero films are usually the first ones, with some exceptions. But they tend to be the first ones because they always have that kind of Rocky Balboa subtext where he has to sort of do something and overcome and get better and and look within themselves to find the hidden strength to overcome an obstacle. Batman Begins has it, Iron Man has it, and I felt that the first Spider-Man had it. Here I felt like they were trying to do that again by having him lose his powers and, of course, only get them back when Mary Jane is in trouble. Like, now suddenly he's Popeye just ate his spinach and he's back in action and ready to go. Right, just like so. I was kind of lukewarm on that because I felt like I get the message here, but like, is Spider-Man just going to kind of run out of powers? Like, is he?
No. I feel what you're saying. Looking at it the way I looked at it today, it occurred to me that part of the subtext of the movie was balance. Everything was about balance, balancing your life, balancing your friends, balancing the fine line between being a determined scientist and an irresponsible human being. It was all about balance. At the beginning of the movie, his balance was everything Spider-Man, everything else was secondary, and everything was paying the price for it because of it. And he got selfish. He even said during the little dream sequence with Uncle Ben, it's like, why can't I be happy? Why can't I do stuff for me?
Yeah.
And and that's when he's like, you know what? No, I've got to do stuff for me. And he starts doing stuff for him. And, he gets his friends, Mary Jane's like, you seem different now. He gets to see his aunt more often. He's doing great in school and everything like that.
Right.
But again, it was without. The problem is again, it explained again, but now you've put the balance all the way in the other direction. And because of that, in the big scene where he's fighting, he tries to save the little girl on the fire. And he's like, hey, that was very brave of you. There was somebody on the 4th floor that didn't make it. It's like, there's the balance. It's like, it's time. There's nothing wrong with it. The movie, this is the movie's way of saying, look, we understand you want to be Spider-Man, but you also need a life. You have to balance. And it's him figuring out how to come up with that balance. and Mary Jane, to him, is the center of that balance.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and that makes perfect sense. And in fact, I'll even do you one better. You're kind of reminding me of when we discussed Split, and we talked about how when you know the mind being so convinced of something that it can manifest itself physically, and I thought that was a fascinating idea in that film, and based on reality. But yeah, so I guess what they're saying here is that like almost like his body stepped up and said, "Look, if you're not going to take a break from being Spider-Man, I'll take a break for you." And and I get that, and I'm okay with it to an extent. There's probably two problems I have. One is that, like, for example, he lost the ability to shoot webs, he falls, and now he can't even climb the walls, which means that the actual, again, like if you the science behind why his hands stick to the walls, these now have gone away, and he's essentially reverting back into just a normal person. Like physically, the body is undoing what it had done to itself when it became Spider-Man. I don't know. I kind of felt like maybe that's a little much. Maybe some things he can do, maybe not everything. And the other problem I have is that, like the part you mentioned about him going into the burning building. First of all, I thought it was odd. He on one hand he slings this young girl over his and lifts her to safety. She pulls him up or helps him up, and I'm thinking like this kid's like 3 years old or something. I don't know if that was I don't know if that made sense. But then when they showed him try to get like burst through the door, he just bounces, like he throws his shoulder into the door and he bounces right off. Like, oh my god, I can't even get through this door. Like he's not, like now he's just a full blown regular schmo. Like all of his spider strength is gone. My problem is this: if he now no longer can do the things he did, then the choice to not do it is gone. Like he threw the costume in the trash and said, "No more. I'm not doing it anymore." But if you add the factor that now he loses his powers and can't do it, like again, when he says there was a guy on the fourth floor, Peter couldn't have done it even if he wanted to. So the choice is taken away. Now that conscious decision to not be Spider-Man anymore is not really so much there. Does that make sense?
I see exactly what you're saying, and to be quite honest with you, I don't have a response to that, because you're right. That when you add in that scene, it takes away my personal theory that it's psychological, that it's a psychological block that's making it happen. So unless he's got some serious, deep-rooted psychological issues, which I guess he's Spider-Man, it's very possible. Yeah, no, I see exactly what you're saying. The powers lost thing does kind of take a detriment when you throw in the scene where he saves the little girl.
Yeah, like I say, I mean, as long as you're going to say that he's losing his powers, I don't know. Like I said, I guess I feel like either it's psychological or it's a conscious choice, and to try to say it's both, it doesn't really make sense.
Well, it wasn't explained probably fairly for the movie, and I think they purposely kept it vague. In the comic books, he lost his powers because he got the flu.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, he went. It was a similar situation. Doc Ock had kidnapped. I want to say Aunt May. I don't remember the specifics, but he was sick. He was home with the flu, and he's like, no, he's calling me out. I have to go get him. So he's fighting him, and he's like nowhere near as strong as he was. He's barely slinging and stuff like that. And Doc Ock unmasks him, and he's like, oh, this is just a concerned nephew. You know, bring me the real Spider-Man, because this was nowhere near the regular Spider-Man.
Right.
So that was the kind of excuse they did in the comic, which, you know, would have worked, but you couldn't have used it more than a couple of days.
Right. Yeah. Right. No, that would have made sense. Yeah. And again, then the part when he, you know, Mary Jane gets kidnapped and all of his powers come back strong as ever. I kind of had this feeling like, all right, he's not the Hulk. Like he's, you know what I mean? He doesn't have. I don't buy that Spider-Man would have a reaction and now he's. Plus, I felt like at the end of the movie, I felt like, but that sort of suggests that anytime he's down the dumps, he could just not be Spider-Man anymore. And now the whole thing is very psychological, and I don't know. I wasn't sure if that was the smartest move for this film.
Yeah, I'm sure they probably actually had an explanation that got cut out or something like that. Hard to say.
Yeah. Because, I mean, again, he's having a rough time in Spider-Man 3. He didn't lose his powers there. So I like I said, I mean, if you're gonna have him lose his powers just when things are kind of going badly, and it's not even like things were not going that badly. I mean, he was having a rotten time, but nobody died, nobody this. I mean, again, if when Uncle Ben got killed, that's when he got his powers. You know, so here
he was running himself ragged. I understood what they were going for. I'm kind of now waffling on whether or not it worked because of your explanation, but they basically demonstrated that, okay, I just lost my job. My job at the Bugle's threatened. I couldn't even get paid at my job at the Bugle because I owed them money. Yeah. My Aunt May gave me $20 and immediately that went to pay my damn rent. I'm failing my class because he's running himself as ragged as he is.
Right.
He lost his job with the pizza place because he stopped and picked up those kids that, were on the ground. If he had not stopped for those kids, he would have made the pizza on time and still would have had his job.
True, right. And you know what? And what you're saying is correct. The problems in his life were because he was Spider-Man. Not just that he's having a rotten day. You're right. These were all because he was Spider-Man, and that's why he was having the problems. And then when Mary Jane gets kidnapped, he remembers why he needs to be Spider-Man in the first place. So maybe that's the way I should be looking at it. That's the
It could have also be one of those things, but just don't think about it too much.
Oh, there you go, Joe. There's always that. There's always, hey, Joe, don't spend all night thinking about this movie.
All right, so do you want to do the new segments? You want to do Who Asked You and For Your Consideration?
Yes, and you go first. And I got to be brutally honest, I got a couple that I was sort of back and forth on, but go ahead.
Okay. There's a lot to like about the movie, so my For Your Consideration is kind of a tie, but we'll get there. Who Asked You? It was a very cool shot, but what the heck was Doc Ock going to do if Spider-Man hadn't jumped out of the way of the car that he threw into the gosh darn coffee shop?
That is a great point. Go ahead.
I watched that scene again. I mean, even the first time I saw the movie, it's like, that seems kind of foolhardy. And when I was watching it again today, it's like, no, the car lands right where him and Mary Jane were. Now, if he knew that Peter was Spider-Man, I would totally buy it. It's like, oh, of course, because he knew he was Spider-Man, blah, 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 blah. It's like, but that would have killed Peter Parker. He's like, don't harm Peter Parker. And he knows Peter Parker. He knows Peter Parker's this shy, timid little guy who's barely able to lift a gosh darn, beaker, let alone his head off of the table. So, yeah, he threw a car at him. And he just knew that he was going to get out of the way. And he was the key to finding Spider-Man. Good job there, Doc Ock.
Right.
You should have done it different.
Right, and then he throws him against a brick wall, almost through the brick wall. So.
Yeah, I have that here. It says, and then him being thrown into a brick wall would have killed the hell out of him.
Totally.
So, right. Yeah, the way I would have done it differently. If who asked me? Here's how I would have done it differently. I either would have had him find out he was Spider-Man, and have him do it that way. Or
like he's picking a fight with him and meet me here, whatever.
Yeah, and or something along those lines. Or alternatively, I would have just had him just kind of come in dramatically, like, Parker, we need to talk.
Yes,
just simple as that. You didn't need to throw the car.
Yeah,
you could have done it equally as dramatic without the potential for Peter Parker dying. Your only connection to Spider-Man.
Very true. Yeah, and actually, I take back what I just said about him just going there to pick a fight with him, because no. The whole point was that he had to kidnap Mary Jane to make Peter Parker become Spider-Man again. So yeah, right. Just go in, just bust in. You didn't have to beat him up or throw a car at him. Yeah, you're totally right. Totally agree.
Now, do you have a who asked you?
Yes, I do. And honestly, it's really just sort of probably just piggybacking on what we said earlier. I don't quite get Mary Jane's character in this. Like I said, when we talked about the first one, I said there was a lot of drama her way, which I didn't feel was necessary. Here again, I'm not quite getting it. And again, the idea that she's pining for Peter, that was hard to say. She's
pining for Peter.
she's pining for Peter with pickled peppers. She's all into Peter, and we're supposed to understand that. We're supposed to get that, yet she's dating this other guy and is going to marry him. Well, hey, make up your mind. Don't be telling me that me and you should be together while you're getting engaged to this other guy.
Right.
I get off your soapbox and whatever.
Not to mention the fact that Peter basically presented himself to her like, "I'm ready now. Let's try this out," and she totally turned him down. "I'm getting married in a church."
Right. Then now suddenly she's like, "Oh, you're too late. Whatever. Well, all right. Well, screw you then." I mean, I almost felt you're right. Enough already.
And that would have been fine had she stuck to her guns.
Yeah, right, exactly.
I would have liked the character. You're right about that. The character's her character is one of the big tragedies of this Spider-Man trilogy, because she became whatever the script needed her to be to cause tension with Peter Parker.
Right. And again, I don't need Peter Parker and Mary Jane Watson to be the Ross and Rachel of the superhero world.
Mm-hmm.
And incidentally, too, one of the things I noticed too, the last shot, when she says, "Go get him, Tiger," I thought that was one of the best lines in the whole movie. I was like, oh my God, just like in the comics. And now I'm like, and you feel vindicated, because again, I like the idea. Usually I hate the whole taking off the mask and like, I mean, seriously, in every Batman movie, he takes off the mask and Batman reveals himself in the Burton ones anyway. And here, I liked it. Because, again, there's been so much tension up until this point, because he's never there for her because he's Spider-Man. He's never, he always getting in trouble because he's Spider-Man. Well, now she knows. She sees him without the mask. She understands everything now. So there was a kind of a tension that gets relieved. Like the weight is off your shoulders. Even as the viewer, the weight kind of comes off. And you're sort of happy that this happened. And I even like this subtlety, by the way. The end after the Doc Ock fight, when he tells her, by the way, he's like, "I still can't be with you because of everything I just said. Now you should understand it." And I love how right after that is the shot of him lowering her down on the web. And I like that, because the subtle, the metaphor in your mind is he's letting her down easy. I kind of like that. That was like literally and figuratively, he's letting her down easy. I thought that was pretty clever.
They couldn't have done it any better if they didn't. If he had said it in the commentary, it was very, very dead on.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty well done. But then, again, I like that. And then she kind of comes back and it's like, "Go get him, Tiger." And I thought, okay, we're good. But the last shot was weird to me, because then he takes off. And he's flying through the city, and you thought this is how the film is going to end. The last shot is back to her with this pouty look on her face.
Yep, and that ominous sounding music.
Yeah, I didn't get it. I to this day, I don't get what that was for.
I guess that's Sam Raimi's way of saying, but there's no happy endings.
Something, I don't know. I thought that was really strange. I mean, you ended on this high note. You again, the whole movie is it sucks being Spider-Man, and I have to lie to everybody and disappoint everyone because of this. And you finally get the victory. You get she understands, and now she gets it, and she's made the decision to go with him anyway. He seems to have accepted that. Awesome. So we got a happy ending, but then just kind of wah. She's got this glum look on her face, and I don't understand it. I don't get what that was for.
I made a mistake. I don't know.
Something maybe
considering what happened in Spider-Man 3, I guess we kind of have our answer, but we'll get back to that.
Maybe she's looking around going, this apartment is pretty busted up. Maybe I should have stuck with my rich astronaut.
All right, cool. Well, for your consideration, I had a couple of things. I loved the part where Norman shows up again and screams out, "Avenge me!" I love that. I thought that was awesome. The part where Peter, he's just saved the L train, and he's kind of like he's falling over, and the people of New York like stop him and then kind of carry him into the train, and everybody's just like, he's just made the sacrifice, and everybody's like, my God, he's just a kid. I thought that was a wonderful scene.
Yeah.
I already spoke about the limbs scene, but you want to talk about the only thing as far as I'm concerned, and the thing that probably will always make this movie be better than just about any other comic book movie, the L Train fight. That is, to me, the L Train fight is the best hero-villain fight in a comic book movie, and I don't think anything has come close to it. It's a comic book fight. He's there. He's throwing freaking people at him. He's catching the people, throwing them up, and putting them in webs, and still chasing after Doc Ock. Yeah. He's getting thrown off the train towards a bridge. He makes himself small so he can fit through the slots of the thing, back down, and right back on Doc Ock. How freaking awesome was that?
Yeah.
It was just perfect.
I totally agree with you. You know, looking back at it, even back then, I felt that it was a little overambitious because the effects had not quite caught up. Sometimes I thought the effects were a little odd. It was trying too much, and my minor criticism is sometimes I watch that and I said, I'm like, is this train coming from Buffalo? Because this is like the longest track I've ever seen. I don't think there's any track remotely like that goes through the heart of Manhattan and would just go on and on and on. And it like ends like it's right about to just drop off into the East River. I thought that was like that always kind of rings in my mind as I'm watching it. Having said that, you're right. That was like probably the superhero battle that we've never had before in a film. Up until that point, I mean, that was it. Like you said, and I think there's a reason why Spider-Man 2 really does stand the test of time, and for a long time was the benchmark that we measured all superhero movies against. That was a character too. Like, I mean, when you first read about, I mean, he was always a good character, Dr. Octopus, even in the cartoons. Like he was a really good, interesting character, really well done, and they nail him in this. I think I totally agree with you. I think when he puts the arms on, even when he puts the goggles on, it's like, wow, he really looks like Dr. Octopus from the comics.
Such great casting. Yeah,
great casting too. In fact, that's for your consideration. That's I'm just piggybacking off yours. That was probably the thing I was going to say. Also, is that fight, even like I said, it has its limitations. The effects were not quite up to speed yet, and some of it looks very CG-ish to me.
Indeed.
However, again, that is a minor criticism. It was a very ambitious scene, and like you said, just way exciting. They're all over the train doing all kinds of things, and you got that, like you said, the city kind of backing up Spider-Man, which I loved in the first one, and they try to replicate that in those Amazing Spider-Man films, and I won't get to that yet. They don't quite get it, but here they get it. They really do get it. I always have mixed feelings when the mask comes off, and I felt like it was the reason the mask came off was like something sparked and got in his eye, so he had to take the mask off.
Yeah, Doc Ock had basically put the train into high gear, pulled the gear out, which, by the way, is not the way a subway works, but that's okay. This is a comic book movie. We're going to let that slide. And when he went down to the conductor says, I can't use the brakes. It sparked. The conducter jumped back, and it hit the side of his mask and burned a small part of it.
Right.
That's why he took it off.
Which seemed to be fine later when he puts it back on. You know, initially I kind of skimmed over. We kind of skimmed over the bank scene where he's robbing the bank and the whole thing with Aunt May and everything.
Which was another great fight scene.
Yeah, right. Another great fight scene. And interesting too. Now here's a question. Do you think Aunt May knows now that he's Spider-Man?
Yes.
I would agree with you there. I think because again, she gives that big pep talk towards the end.
Yep.
I think she gets it too, yeah. And another 100%. Side character, by the way, I think Robbie Robertson knows that he's Spider-Man.
Oh, yeah. That was also very clear that he, at the very least, suspected.
Yeah.
Wasn't about to give the
there was
game
kind of a look that he gives halfway through to Peter, and I'm like, I think he knows too. I think he suspects that he's Spider-Man.
Yep, 100%.
Yeah, because it was a funny thing. Because again, you would think, you would think that Peter Parker would put on one of those, voices when he's talking to somebody he knows. Like he puts Aunt May down on the ground and he says, "We sure showed him," and does not change his voice whatsoever. You think he'd say, "Hello, lady, you're welcome," or something, change it up a little bit so she wouldn't. No, he doesn't. So yeah, I think that she probably knows. I think Robbie gets it, which again, very subtle, and it takes a view or two before you sort of catch that. I think.
Yeah,
which is nice.
I always appreciate the subtle stuff that they did in this. Like even that fight, in its own way, as visceral as it was subtle. It didn't really, it gave enough information to the audience. I mean, here's the thing: you tell people this is what's going to happen. Doc Ock is going to throw him. He's going to head towards an overhang bridge, and Spidey's going to slip his way through that. If you describe it, it's easy. But like now you want to try to do it visually without having somebody explain, "Oh my God, Spidey just slipped right through there," and they pulled that off.
Yeah.
Little subtle things like that I appreciated in the movie. The scene with the limbs flying everywhere and the little Evil Dead, and that's what it was. It was an Evil Dead homage. You can call it whatever you want. But, the saw there and everything like that, him raising the saw up in the air. And even after the last Doctor is out and the saw goes down, there's like an image of like the tentacles moving away from the Doctor in the reflection of the saw. Little stuff like that was just beautiful. I love that stuff.
Very much so, yeah.
As opposed to the on the head stuff like I'm getting married in a church and what have we been talking about for the last hour and a half?
Yeah. Like I said, there's a reason why this was the benchmark for a long time for a good superhero film.
Indeed. Yeah. And my rating, I give it an 8 out of 10.
I will give it an 8 also, and I tell you, I'm very close to a 9 on this one. I think only because of the limitations back then of what they were willing to do in a superhero film. I think had Raimi been doing this today, I believe that Raimi could have easily been part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and done a spectacular. I think he would have done the same thing even better today. So
yeah, I agree.
That's probably the only reason why I'll keep it an 8. And again, when I did my first Spider-Man rating, I said I'm gonna keep that one at a 7 because I think it gets better. And here is where I think he hits an 8. And again, given the limitations of the time, is probably only why it's stuck at an 8. I think had he done it today with a little more freedom to explore different things, and somebody say, "Hey, look, we're going to give you a couple of films so you can stretch out and take your time with some of these things and be a little more subtle," I think it would have easily been a 9. So yeah, I'm gonna as it is, I'm gonna give it an 8.
Hey, we're on the same page.
I think we're probably both in a very similar mind about this film.
Yep, indeed. And yet we had a nice debate about it, too. I love doing this show. I think that's it.
I think that is it, too. I think next week we'll be back to talk about Spider-Man 3, which I'm sure we're going to have plenty to say.
Here's a sneak preview, ladies and gentlemen. If you listen to the A Good Day to Die Hard podcast, it might be similar.
We're not going to be debating between an 8 and a 9 on Spider-Man 3.
100% not.
Yeah, definitely not. But then, after that, we will be back to talk about Spider-Man Homecoming.
Oh, so looking forward to that. My kid is dying.
Oh my God, me too. I tell you, I'm very much looking forward to that, and tell you, good things. It's a good time to be talking about movies because we got good stuff coming.
Indeed. All right, my man. Well, you have yourself a great night, and good night, ladies and gentlemen.
I will see you next week, buddy. Thanks for listening to the Reviews Without Remorse podcast with Joe and Dave. Join us here every Thursday for a new episode. And be sure to check out the Reviews Without Remorse channel on YouTube and VidMe for spoiler-free reviews of new releases, as well as in-depth discussions of current and classic cinema. If you enjoy this podcast, please consider becoming a patron. You can find our page at patreon.com. As little as $1 a month goes a long way. All clips in this podcast are used for commentary and critique, and is considered fair use. No copyright infringement is intended.